All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Bowl podcast. Today, me, Nick, here, will be looking at the 2023 Cotton Bowl being played December 29th, Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Missouri 1-point favorite, live from AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Looking at these offenses, Nick, I just want to go ahead and start with Ohio State because there's a lot of uncertainty here. We have no idea who is going to play. Marvin Harrison Jr., Cade Stover, Emeka Egbuka, Travion Henderson. I mean, the assumption is some of these guys probably won't play. Trip Trainum is transferring. Maya Williams is banged up. So, I mean, this is an offense completely in flux. We don't know what is going to happen. Looks like Devin Brown is going to be getting the start, though, a guy that was, closely competitive with McCord in the preseason for the job. So he's going to have an opportunity here. He's a good runner for them. He's thrown 22 passes this year for a $197 and 2 scores along with an interception. So we're going to have a good chance to see what he's going to do because Ohio State really hasn't, gained much momentum in the portal at quarterback. I certainly think they're going to figure things out in the future. But for this game, Brown looks like he's going to be getting the go. Xavier Johnson, Carnell Tate, guys that you can count on to be playing in this contest. I'm really just not sure who's going to play for Ohio State. What is your expectation for this offense, one way or the other, I guess?
This offense was a solid offense this year, right? 32.8 points per game, 4.29 yards per attempt, and 6.59 yards per play. This team was solid offensively. I thought the offense wasn't really the problem. I thought the defense was fantastic as well for this team. So I really don't know exactly what the direction here. The high expectations up there in Columbus have sort of led to this team dismantling his offense. Obviously, they ran McCord out of town. I didn't think that was the right decision. He wanted a guarantee that he'd be the starting quarterback next year. Ryan Day could not give him that guarantee, so he hits the portal and heads to Syracuse, where he tries to find greener grass. If this offense is playing at full strength, right, the 32 points per game, this is a fantastic unit. But with this bit part unit that we have here for this game against Missouri, we don't really know who's going to play, and it makes it tough to make the analysis. Devin Brown is certainly going to be the man under center for this team. You'd have to imagine that at this point in time. But outside of that, really, you have no idea what type of team they could be throwing out here, and it's really tough to predict and make a fair assessment of this offense when there's so much uncertainty with Ryan Day and company.
Certainly think this offense was less than desirable compared to what they should have been. Like you said, about 32 points per game. That's a pretty rough number for them. The passing attack never really hit a peak like we thought they would. Rushing attack was better in the second half of the year, only $142 for them. Dallin Hayden, I think he'll probably get to go. I think they're trying to redshirt him this year. I know G. Scott's been a reliable pass catcher at times. It does seem like the entire offensive line will be a go. Matthew Jones has been good for them. Donovan Jackson, a solid player for them at guard. I do know somebody on this line transferred, but overall the offensive line was really good in pass protection this year. Run blocking not so much. Look at the Missouri offense. No opt-outs to worry about here, Nick. This is a team that's happy to be in Dallas, and they're certainly going to come out and compete. Brady Cook, one of the most improved players in the country. Well, we always knew about what he could do with his legs. 253 and 8 scores this year. Really focused more on being, relevant pocket passer. 3,189 yards, 20 touchdowns, 6 picks. This is a guy that really showed out multiple times this year. Did have 2 picks against Georgia, but he did make some good plays in that one. Put up 400 plus against LSU. Made some big time plays against Florida, the seal of victory there. And of course, they were great in their dominance against Tennessee. This is a team that's going to have a full complement of weapons. Of course, you start with Luther Burden. We said that this guy needed to get more touches this year, and they delivered 100 yards per game, 83 for 1197 and 8 scores. Far and away leads the team in all those categories. Theo Weast, Oklahoma transfer. He had a really good season, 639 and 8 scores. And despite Mookie Cooper not finding the end zone, his 429 yards and 34 receptions were incredibly coveted. Then you have Marquise Jones, a freshman, to put up, or Johnson that is, putting over 27 yards per catch. This is a really good receiving core, Nick. Cook, very happy with what he was able to accomplish this year, and that's why they're here.
This is a fantastic offense headlined by Brady Cook. You figured the progression would be eventually hit that point where he could be that starting quarterback at the SEC. He was just progressing slowly but surely and really finding out how to fully flesh out his game. We knew he was solid on the ground. The 8 scores on the ground will certainly tell you that. But he was a great pocket passer this year, 66% comp rate, 3,100 yards. 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, great ratios across the board. I think he has some nice weapons to throw. Luther Burden is a fantastic wide receiver, right? Nearly 200 yards receiving, 14.4 and 8 scores. Burden, a big 5-star that was landed. Eli Drinkwitz, that was his first big major land for Missouri. It started to seem like the dominoes were beginning to fall when he did that. We wondered if Burden would last past 1 year with the NIL and transferring and stuff like that. He stayed for year 2 and had absolutely burst onto the scene as one of the nation's best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver. Missouri is continuing to head in the right direction due to NIL changes in their state. Theo Weiss is a fantastic wide receiver, another transfer who's a fantastic player. For them, 6 touchdowns. Mookie Cooper, I think he gets on the board and scores a touchdown in this game. I think that's my bold comment for the game, is that Mookie Cooper finds the end zone here to get his first score of the season. Marquise Johnson, Brett Northfleet are solid players as well. And Cody Schrader is just a fantastic player for this offense. I really like what I've seen of this offense this year.
2 years ago when we previewed Missouri, we talked about a walk-on transfer in Cody Schrader from Truman State, and this year he really sprung onto the scene as one of the top runners, 1,499 yards, 13 touchdowns. There's no way this guy's opting out from walk-on at an FCS school to being one of the top rushers at the Power 5 level. So happy to see guys like Schrader succeed, especially in this conference. And of course, he has a great left side in Xavier Delgado and Javon Foster leading the way. $170 on the ground per contest for Missouri. This is a running game that had some good success with Georgia. Getting to the boundary, 255 against Tennessee, sealing the deal with 258 against Arkansas. I mean, this is a rushing attack that was really good, especially in the second half of the year, Nick. What's it mean to you to see a guy like Schrader succeed?
Oh, this is a fantastic story. Schrader is a great guy. Like you said, Truman State. I mean, just coming from nowhere and jumping up to this level. This offense was great on the ground. 4.59 yards per attempt, 24 rushing touchdowns, about 2,000 yards on the season, 34 points per game for this offense. A guy in Cody Schrader, I love the story. 1,500 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns. Just an incredible story. A really kind of feel-good story. In an era where players transfer and give up on their careers and fall to lower levels and opt-outs and things like that, Cody Schrader is a feel-good story of a guy that grinded to get to the top and really showed out strong performance for his team all season.
Now looking at the defenses, we'll stay with Missouri. This is a football team really thought could accomplish a lot this year. We're not shocked at all to see them with a top 10 rating, but we are shocked to see the offense have that much success and the defense not have as much. 22.3 points per game, still really good mark. But we certainly felt this defense could have accomplished a lot more, especially kind of like in the games against Georgia, the game against LSU where they gave up a lot of yards, and obviously everyone struggled against the Tigers. But the game against Florida, for example. So they certainly weren't perfect by any means, especially in the first month of the season. They played a lot of close games, weren't good on that side of the ball. 400 to 500 yards with a backup quarterback was pretty ridiculous. But they showed out in games against Tennessee. For the most part in conference play, they were great. This is a highly talented defense regardless. Linebacker Tyrone Harper, and of course, one of their top corners will be out due to injury in Enos Rakestraw, but they're still very good on this side of the ball. Darius Robinson, Johnny Walker, really talented defensive line. Chuck Hicks really stepped up at linebacker, missed 10 tackle for loss. Tristan Newsome, he's going to play a good bit in this contest as well. This is a unit against the run, $125 allowed per game, only 1,500 yards and 8 touchdowns. They've really been solid on this side of the ball. They held Georgia in check for the most part. Florida, really exploded on them, and the LSU as well. So they gave up 260-plus yards in both of those games. Other than that, opponents did not hit 150 very often. It looks like Kentucky was the only one that was able to accomplish that feat in a big blowout fashion. Against an offensive line that struggled to really run block, Nick, and really generate much. And they're probably, if Henderson plays, that's going to be big for them. You got to look out for toughness and speed on the edge in that category. But guys like Christian Williams, Niles Gady, Jaden Jernigan, this is a great senior-led defensive line. They're going to play hard in this one.
It's a very physical, strong defensive unit here. I think this is a defense that we had high expectations for. I think they're solid against the run, right? 3.87 yards per attempt on the ground, 22.3 points per game. I think the secondary is where this defense, or it's kind of begins to let you down here. There are some solid players in this front part of this defense. Chuck Hicks, 49 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Good numbers there. Johnny Walker Jr., 41 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. Darius Robinson, Tristan Newsome, both at 41 total tackles. As well, Robinson, 12 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks for him, 4.5 for Newsome. Relias George Jr., 24 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks for him. So nice production numbers here. This team's solid in the backfield. Losing Hopper, is a bit of a loss for this team. But overall, this is still a defense that has nice production potential here.
And now you look at that secondary that I think kind of underperformed, giving up 63% completion rating, 22 touchdowns. They weren't awful ever, but it seems like, games against Memphis, they could have been better. Against Georgia, they're giving up a lot of big plays in that one. Really shut down Tennessee. Florida, again, was a game that they really struggled in. Jane Daniels also had his way with them. It just seemed like the secondary certainly let them down at times, and they're going to be without one of their top corners again. And a Rakestraw, but Chris Abrams-Drainey, he's going to play in this one. He's an elite cover corner for them. Got plenty of good players in this back end. Drayton Norwood has been a really good tackler. Dalen Carnell, Jalen Carlisle's, and then Joseph Charleston as well. This is a really good secondary, has plenty of talent, certainly left a lot on the board there. This is still a very sound part of the defense for them. Look at Ohio State, we're still unsure who's going to play here I think everyone on this defensive line you probably got to look out for. I'm guessing, this late in the cycle, we're not going to see too many opt-outs, which is good news for them. Tyleik Williams, JT Tuimoloau, Ty Hamilton, and then Jack Sawyer really stepped up this year as a run defender. This is a run defense last time out, Nick. They were playing really good against Michigan until it came late in the second half, and they were just going to grind it down on. Gave up a big touchdown. They gave up, like a 7-8 minute drive there to pretty much end the game for the Wolverines. 232 against Rutgers. That was really the only slouch for them. Notre Dame in that third quarter, all the way back in September, had some good success. Other than that, though, this run defense has been elite, Nick. But it had to be, 2 times elite to beat the Wolverines to get to the playoff. They just didn't do that.
They were not able to get the job done against a physical running attack in Michigan. When you have a guy like Cody Schrader that you're coming against, it certainly is a concerning thing if you're a fan of this Ohio State team, because this Cody Schrader is so talented and he can move really fast on the ground. This is a good front part of this defense. I do think there are some talented pieces here, top to bottom. Tommy Eichenberg, 82 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss. Steel Chambers, 75 total tackles. Tyleik Williams, 49 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Jack Sawyer, 44, 7 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. JT Tuimoloau, 34 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks for him. Michael Hall Jr., 21 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 1.5 sacks for him. So there is nice production on this front part of this unit. They've been good this year, right? 11 points per game is obviously a really nice mark for this defense. 3.38 yards per attempt on the ground and 4.12 yards per play. So it's a very efficient and effective defense that could be potentially running at full speed here in this bowl game. A very nice thing if you're an Ohio State fan.
Yeah, the adjustments at linebacker and Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers, those guys have been big for this program. Seniors looking to go out with a victory, and in the secondary as well. Safety Sonny Styles really stepped up this year. Josh Proctor as well. You got to look out for his. You got to monitor if he's going to be available. Jordan Hancock has been a pleasant surprise for them at corner. They're facing some really talented receivers. Certainly haven't faced many passing attacks like this one. This is a secondary this year. They've not given up many big plays at all. It's 52% comp rate. 8 touchdowns, 7 picks, only 147 per game. That is elite numbers. And again, the Big Ten doesn't have the most, defying passing attacks by any means. But you get, you still got to go out there and earn it, right? So they, obviously Colston and Loveland kind of tore them apart. Michigan had an 81% comp rate, held them to under 200 yards though. 204 by Western Kentucky is the most they've allowed all year, and that was a 53-point blowout victory. So 2 sound defenses, I think, here. Coming into this one, 11 points per game though for Ohio State. Very impressive mark. Jim Knowles really got these guys going in the right direction this season. Look at the final thoughts and the prediction. For Missouri, they need to find the ways to get rush yards. That might be quick screens, bubble screens, QB run, whatever it may be. Because I think Schrader, a fast guy, certainly might have some trouble there in the hole. How will the offense look without that balance if Schrader's unable to get things going? And does Ryan Day care about this game? Who's playing for Ohio State? I'm going to take Missouri to win by a couple of points in a low-scoring affair. Even with Devin Brown, I think there's still going to be enough talent for him to work with. But this is an Ohio State team that's only eclipsed 40 points once, Nick, against Power 5 teams, 41 against Purdue back on the 14th of October. Very disappointing stuff from them, even though they certainly were good against Michigan, I thought, in spurts on offense. They still were not able to get the job done, even though they had 6.5 yards per play. We'll see who plays. If they're at full strength, I think you might see a little bit more points. Brown's obviously talented, and he's probably had enough work with them in practice to be able to look competent. But Ohio State, incredibly disappointing this year. I know they costed me some money, but they've also really upset this fan base tremendously.
Another situation here where it's one team that has nothing to lose, everything to gain, and a team that really gained nothing from this game, Ohio State. In Columbus, they want national championships. That's all it is. And Ryan Day failed to do the one thing he needs to go out there, the 2 things he needs to go out there and do: beat Michigan, win national championship. He didn't get to do either of those because he got to do one before he can do the other. Failed to beat Michigan 3 years in a row. In my opinion, that seat is getting hot there in Columbus. That fan base, they are very, very upset with this right now. The team ran Kyle McCord out of town. He's gone. I don't think he was to blame. I thought he looked fine there in his first season as a starter. I thought the defense was phenomenal. I thought the offense was pretty good, not good enough, obviously, to beat Michigan. McCord's picking out the game sealed their fate, but again, not his fault in my opinion. I don't think Ryan Day cares about this game at all. He's kind of just going to sleepwalk through it. This means nothing to Ohio State and their fans, and I hate to say that because it's bad for the sport, but this team just wants to be competing for national championship, and they're not doing so while their arch rivals preparing for a Rose Bowl date with Alabama. Missouri, though, they have a lot to gain here. Missouri, they've been making a lot of noise this year. year. You and I are both high on them, but did we think 10 wins was achievable? No, not really. They're going to hit a high mark there. Eli Drinkwitz has cooled off his seat after some people said he had the hot seat, which again I don't really agree with. But they are recruiting well. NIL is very beneficial for this program due to state laws where they can start paying players in high school that commit to the Tigers. They're in a great spot here. This team's going to have a fun day here. They're super excited. The fans are super excited. I love the Tigers in this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. The spread, I think, kind of is starting to indicate some big money on Missouri. We'll see how motivated Ohio State is for this game. Like you said, kind of disappointing, especially for me who picked them to win the national title. Just this offense, it makes me sick to my stomach that they were not able to hit a higher ceiling. That's going to be it for today's episode. As always, appreciate you joining me, Nick, getting these New Year's Six Bowls kicked off the right way.
Super excited for some fun games on New Year's.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.